Part 3. We're doing part 3. Well, the reason why I left so little in this debate for part 3 was I was going to cover what happened after, but I've been banned from Pisco's Discord, and I was going to show you all the tweets, but he put his account into fortress mode because, I don't know, I think he got sick of getting embarrassed by Rob every day. So I guess it's going to be a short one. But just a quick recap, we saw about an hour and 15 minutes worth of like some of the most bad faith mode extreme that I think I've ever seen. And then after that, the dude sort of calmed down. And he started actually offering up real arguments, sort of. I don't think he actually ever got to the point where he offered a real argument. But he calmed down a bit. So we're going to go from there and pick it up. Let me just rewind just a little bit so we can get a recap.
Threshold of delusion, where I'm like, okay, this person literally, he is delusional, and so I can't truly say he's being willfully blind. He's just like a delusional person.
Now, let me relate this. Oops, sorry. I'm sorry. I thought I cut you off. I didn't mean to.
No, you go ahead.
I want to kind of compare. I think Stacey Abrams truly believed that she won the 2018 election. I think Al Gore truly believed he won the 2000 election. The only one that I think there's enough proof for to say that they truly didn't believe the illegitimate election claims is the Clinton campaign in 2016 because of the Durham and Horowitz reports. Because we have those smoking guns that they knew it was false. And Comer, or what's his name? Clapper, briefed Biden and Obama on that.
Happy to deal with that. Happy to deal with that stuff, which I will in a second. I just want to mention something you talked about. If Stacey Abrams says that she was cheated out of the election and that there was fraud in the election, that'd be a lie, wouldn't it?
It was incorrect. I think she truly believed it, though. She went in front of the Senate and said the election was stolen under oath. I think, like, either she's the most brazen liar out there, or I really do believe that she believed it. And I know. Now, by this standard, even if you believe something and you're saying it's not true, you're lying. And again, I promised this in the last video, we never got to it, but my ultimate debunk of this argument comes up, and then you see silly little caveats get thrown out. So let's continue. A lot of people here in Georgia that believe it as well.
Assuming that Stacey Abrams said there was fraud. When she's saying stolen, she's talking about like
the Secretary of State she was running against was in control of the election, and he illegally moved people from the ballot.
They turned people down. They did some regulation stuff. They fucked with the election process, right? If she were to say there was voter fraud, wouldn't she be lying?
I don't know. I don't know what.
There's no evidence of it, right?
I mean, there was no evidence that Stacey Abrams. Yeah, there was no evidence at the end of the day that Stacey Abrams got screwed over. But it takes time for those investigations to happen. We didn't know that until like 2019.
So if on election night, Stacey Abrams said Brian Kemp committed voter fraud, his whole operation committed voter fraud. Assume she said that. I know that's not what Trump said, but assume that she said that, and she didn't have any specific knowledge of it or any evidence to back that up. Would you say she's lying?
Fuck, I don't know. It really depends on the circumstances. I'm just like,
oh, come on.
I really don't like to attribute malice to people, like, unless I know. Dude. I'm trying to like give as much good faith to these people. I think Stacey Abrams truly believed what she was saying.
I'm just talking about my hypothetical, where Stacey Abrams comes out on election night, no evidence of voter fraud. She's not talking about processes. Let's say, So she can't wiggle out of it by saying, I was talking about the processes or the being turned away. She's literally just talking about fraud.
Okay. Oh yeah. I mean, if there's like proof that there's no fraud and she's been presented to it, then yes.
No.
Yes, I agree.
There is no proof. It's just election night. Stacey Abrams goes out on the podium and says, I know it says that Brian Kemp is ahead. I won this election. There was fraud.
That's essentially what she said.
Even though she has no evidence of fraud.
Yeah, that's essentially what she said.
No, but whether or not it's essentially what she did, I'm not asking whether it's essentially what she did. I'm just trying to isolate the situation and get to what you think about it. You come out and you say,
I didn't do a good job here. I understood his example, and he was looking for a specific answer, and I kind of dodged it unintentionally. I wasn't trying to dodge it, but I could have done this better. I really like this version of Pisco if this is how he was all the time. I'd have no problem with the dude. It's just sad that it took us an hour and a half to get here.
Say that as Stacey Abrams. Isn't that a lie?
Again, with the context, no, I don't. If she truly thought that,
come on,
I don't think it's a lie. A lie is a specific, intentional misleading of the facts. I don't know based off that.
She has no knowledge.
No, I do think the argument you're giving that post all these things, Trump's still repeating things that have been already debunked. That I can give you would probably be a lie.
In the hypothetical I'm presenting, where Stacey Abrams has any evidence of fraud, and she just says it, knowing she has no evidence of it.
Okay, but like you don't need concrete evidence to have a speculation. So what we're talking about here again can be summed up. I think I said this in my last video, but I'm going to say it again. If somebody believes something, even if they don't have proof of it, them stating their beliefs is not them lying. You don't need proof to make a statement without it being an intentional lie. Like you can say things that aren't true. You can say things that don't have a factual backing and not be lying. There's a lot of, you could be mistaken, you could be wrong. If somebody's just wrong, it doesn't mean they're lying. Also, hilarious pause there. Yeah, it doesn't mean they're lying. Like, lying isn't an action, like a specific action somebody takes to bend the truth when they know better, and it's a very high bar to clear, which it should be, because you're attributing an action to somebody. Now, if you have them saying, I know, like Andrew Tate, I made this all up when in one of his texts, he said, I made this up. Now, if that could be proven that he actually did make this up and he wasn't just talking it up to his boys, then yeah, that's a lie. Like, you have to catch somebody actually in the lie. You can't just say, well, they said something that wasn't true, so it's a lie. Like, nah, people are wrong, or people have beliefs. There's a lot of different reasons why somebody could say something untrue. To just automatically jump to a lie is not correct. And I stand by that standard, and I think put to the test, Pisco would as well. She could speculate.
No, she's saying this is fraud. This is fraud. That's a lie.
She really believed it. She challenged it in court. She fucking testified
I'm talking
under
about
oath.
hypothetical, but this is before there's any court challenge. This is a hypothetical. You're just don't worry about anything.
I'm sorry.
It's election night in Georgia. Is it 2018? 2018.
No, I don't see that as a lie, is what I'm saying. I've already answered. Okay, cool. I just was more definitive. No, I do not see this as a lie. I don't see that as a lie.
Okay.
It took me a lot longer to just give him the answer he wanted, which I think I did a couple of times, just not as definite as I should have. And he kept saying, come on, and then repeating his example over and over. But I didn't handle this hypothetical situation well. I should have just let him get it out, said, okay, I get what you're saying, and I still don't agree.
I think that most people would say that that's a lie. I think most people would say that's a lie.
I don't, because a lie is knowingly telling falsehoods. If she believes it's true, it's not a lie, it's misinformation.
So if she goes out and says, we found aliens, we have proof of aliens.
All right, show the proof. I'm all ears.
No, we have it. We do have it. Is that a lie?
I mean, I don't know. No, at that point, no. If you show me the proof and the proof doesn't add up to it, then yes, but I have to see the proof first.
Wait, no. Someone who, the hypothetical I'm doing is someone doesn't have any evidence for aliens and comes out and says, I know that aliens exist. They're here.
No, that's a belief. I mean, do you think everyone that believes God exists is a liar? And that's it.
No, I don't.
That's the debunking to his argument that I needed way sooner. That's his debunking to his standard of a lie. When somebody states something like God is real or Jesus is real, they don't have any actual tangible proof of that. It's a belief of faith. So when someone states those things, by Pisco's standard, they're lying. But when I bring it up, he says no, because he knows his standard is ridiculous. So let's hear how he tries to defend this obvious argument that completely blows his point out of the water.
I don't think necessarily they are. I think that they truly believe that there's a God.
And
I didn't
transmit that laugh. That was me just laughing at myself.
It's a good point to bring up, because that's the typical one that we're talking about lying. If there's a true belief that you can show of someone, then I think that with religion being so ubiquitous, it's not at the point, right, where we can say that belief in a God is by necessity a lie because there's no proof. It's the.
And there's the caveat. Well, my standard is my standard until an example comes up that my standard falls short, and then my standard is no longer applicable. Which, and then it's not a good fucking standard if you ask me. Like, I don't know. I feel like that was like completely destroyed his lie argument. And then again, well, no, and well, here's a caveat X and here's caveat Y. It's like, bro, that's my point. Your caveats are my point. So.
Kind of, I understand what you're getting at. It's a good point to bring up. It's the strongest one when you're talking about this.
It's not the strongest one, and I should have been more prepared with it early. I can think of, now that I'm like in hindsight, I can think of other great arguments similar to that, but I mean, I don't want to relitigate the debate right now. I'm probably in a calmer mood than I was when I made number 1 and 2. Also, I do want to say, my diagnosis after watching 1 and 2 is that I need to be more aggressive, that I need to be more angry, that I need to be more yelly and on top of like keeping people in check and matching their energy. And I don't think that that's correct. And I'm really glad that I did this debate recap because my Pavlovian knee-jerk response to it was, I need to match this dude's level of energy and dishonesty and put him in his place on his own level. And that's not correct. That feels good to do. That feels great to do. But it's not proper. The side that keeps their decorum, even when met with some hostility and dishonesty, is the side that comes out looking better in the end. If anyone watched the Trent and Destiny debate on pro-life and pro-choice, that Trent dude just handed him his own ass over and over and over again. Now there were some exchanges where Destiny probably came out on the better hand, but like, for the main core argument and for most of the ancillary points discussed after, Trent just handed him his own ass over and over and over and never once got worked up, never once got salty, never threw an insult out. Like, the amount of decorum that guy brought to the debate, I watched that and I don't think I've ever really been jealous of somebody as an adult. Usually when I see an adult do something or have something that I want, I'm like, oh, I can obtain that, and here's how I do it, and I step forward in that path. But that Trent guy, like, his level of just, like, ability to debate somebody was antagonizing him, and he still just held it down so strongly. I need to be more like that. I don't want to match, it makes me feel dirty inside to match these dudes on the same level of dishonesty and hostility. I don't like to talk shit in debates. I want to make it about the facts. I don't want to make it about who's the best at dunking on the other one. So if you watched my first 2 videos before you got here, I was all wrong. I think that being calm and keeping your decorum about you and staying on task is probably the best answer. And let the audience judge. You know, like, all of his fans, after watching this, said I got crushed on every level. And, like, watching it back, no, I didn't. And like, I'm not just being biased because it's me. I didn't. The guy really did not have a good productive first half of this debate, if not first 2/3. And he was completely dishonest and full of bad faith, not even hearing my arguments. So his fans are always going to side with him. They're his fans, of course they are. And if I get any fans ever, I'm sure they're going to side with me, even if I'm wrong. But watching this back and trying to critique myself, I find more critiques of his strategy than my own. I don't know, but like, without those other 2 examples in mind and just seeing him here, kind of feel bad that I was rude to the guy. Like, he seems like a decent dude in the last like half an hour of this debate. So
this kind of lies is genuine belief in things that where there is no large amount of proof for, but because we know that there's widespread.
That's the cackle of somebody that knows they just won the point.
Non-critical belief in God. I think that it takes it a little bit out of the kind of normal set of priors that I would impose on people engaged in everyday speech. It's the kind of claim where it's difficult to prove or disprove in the abstract anyway, right?
Yeah.
How can I prove that God exists or doesn't exist? Those are kind of, now where election fraud claims and UFO alien claims, those are of a kind of claim in which those are things that people expect to be proven with evidence. Right?
I
They're not
agree.
claims of, right? So like, because of that, that's how I distinguish it. You know, it might feel a little bit convenient.
Yeah, I get you. I get what you're saying. It is very convenient, and in fact, it's negating his entire argument because, like, his caveats are my point. If somebody believes something, a belief is different than a factual, proven statement. So if somebody truly believes something, then, like, who cares what the facts are? The point really here that we got to boil it down to is, I don't think anyone's going to be able to prove that Trump knew that he lost the 2020 election and was doing all these things to try to seize power. I don't think they have the goods there to prove that. But your criteria here was before there was evidence, before anything was settled, just going out there and saying, I know this is true, before any of the lawsuits were done or anything. That's pretty on par with, I think God is real. Now, that's a good job, me. I don't remember this. Yeah, taking him back to his original point that, like, his example was before we even had any proof, before any of the investigations were done, before any of that, just going out and stating something based on a belief is a lie. So his caveats don't even add up sometimes. Now,
I don't think it's on par with that. Because I think that, like, those kinds of claims of election fraud, I think most people say that in order for me to believe election fraud, I'm not just going to assume it on faith. And I don't think that Trump says on faith, I believe that the election fraud is real. I think it would be on proof. We can demonstrate this. Whereas I think that there's a lot of religious people who say on faith, it's faith. Yeah. That's actually one of the virtues of religion, according to the religious, is the fact that it's faith, and the fact that you're, in a sense, you know, what does Islam mean, right? Isn't Islam mean surrender, right? To a certain extent, it's surrender. Or I think Islam means literally surrender or something. Or what I think, where you're surrendering yourself to a higher power, and in a sense you are entrusting beyond the physical, beyond the tangible, that there's something more metaphysical or more
I agree,
transcendental or something, right? Something beyond the physical.
I agree with
those kind of claims. I think are a little different. When you're talking about people alleging voter fraud, they're never saying just believe us. They're saying it's been documented. This has been proven. Right, so that's how I distinguish them, and I think you would accept the distinction. And just like if I were to say something like this, come on.
No, well, because my argument for why God doesn't exist is because you can't prove it to me. That's it. That's my argument right there.
We're talking about the nature of a lie, not whether or not something exists or not.
Well, I don't think people that think God exists are lying, but if I don't believe He exists because there's no proof of it.
Yeah, I'm trying to distinguish those cases. Otherwise, everything explodes and nothing is a lie, because there's always a potential, unless you have a smoking gun of someone, like you can read their mind because we develop technology, or you have, I guess maybe you would accept a written confession of a lie. But unless those exist, there's always.
Or a video of somebody stating they did X and then them actually doing Y, which is different than X. I gave all these examples with Darrell Brooks when that got brought up, because again, I watched that whole trial and I don't think he expected that. I bet you he just watched some highlights. That's another, like, there are ways to prove a lie, but it's a very high bar. So, and it should be, absolutely. I stand by that. And I think if the shoe was on the other foot, he would as well.
Be some facial case that you can say, I just believe on faith, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't there, and the video camera shows you're there. That was a lie.
Yeah, no, but like, I just believe I wasn't.
Yeah.
Right? So, what I'm saying is, if we accept your view that everything is liable to be like religion, where like a just facial statement that I'm believing on blind faith is enough for you to not to be considered a liar, I think it blows up what our intuition of what a lie is. It becomes an unworkable standard. And then, suppose that Fauci said something like, suppose Fauci said this, right? Or the vaccine people, right? Of which I would say I'm one of them. I'm a vaccine advocate.
Yeah, I got vaccinated.
If Pfizer comes out and says, the test results are it, the vaccines are 100% effective, but the data all show that the vaccines are 5% effective, right? And then you ask the Pfizer people, why did you lie? No, I didn't lie. I truly believe that the vaccine is 100% effective. I truly believe that. I believe it. People would say that's a lie.
That's kind of my argument about God, though, is we can go up into the sky. Now, it's not 2,000 years ago. We can go up there and see there's no heaven up there. We can go look inside the earth and see there's no hell in there. So we can go look back in history and see the earth is more than 7,000 years old, and it wasn't started with Adam and Eve.
I don't know where to start with that. I don't think people believe in God is currently, and maybe even ever was, dependent on what's literally in the air. I agree that we can go in the air. I don't think that disproves God, and I don't think that the fact that we can go into like the
I wasn't saying like those are my actual. I was just giving examples or whatever.
Yeah,
those are my actual arguments. They're more nuanced than that.
I truly think that like you should.
Paraphrasing, I should have said. I was paraphrasing my arguments just to give points. I do believe those things. It's just they're a little bit more detailed arguments.
Be more. I think that lying is a high threshold because it is an intentional, deliberate act. But if the only evidence of lying that you are going to accept is a confession,
that's not it.
Because there's always a facially possible thing that you can say that I just took it on faith, unless you have a contradicting confession. Then I feel like it just kind of blows up.
Okay, so
lying standard.
I think we're gonna have to, in order to get to this lie thing, I gotta dive into some of the actual claims. Where the Arizona Cyber Ninja recount didn't happen until months later, and that was one of their claims, is that the ballot counts were wrong because there were fraudulent ballots mixed in. And I get it's silly, it's stupid, but there's a lot of people that actually believe that. A lot of YouTubers, a lot of people on Twitter actually believe that. And I also kind of believe Trump did. I think Trump thinks that maybe China put ballots in there, or maybe fucking Dominion was owned by somebody in Venezuela that had bad intentions or whatever. I think
I would categorize that as willful blindness given the investigations that took place prior. Yes, in Arizona. I think the Cyber Ninja search.
Again, this doesn't meet his own standard. He's like, well, because of investigations that happened, we knew that it wasn't true. Well, these investigations happened after. His standard for a lie was not based off of the investigations that happened after. It was based off of saying something right then in the moment prior to the investigations. So he can't even argue his own stance when I give him an example. He pivots to my stance, which is we need proof in later investigations to determine if something is true or not.
All happened after the transfer of power.
Yeah.
And so I don't ascribe it to his intention.
I'm not trying to relitigate. What I'm saying is I should have called him out on that, and I did.
For all the conduct that happened before, and before this investigation was even started. Why would I give Trump credit based on an investigation that started after the period in time in which I'm assessing?
Well, that was one of their claims.
Intentionality. Well, their claim, they didn't accept the recounts in the relevant places where by law they were required, and so what they wanted was some hacks.
You don't even have to. I know.
Preposterous thing, but even if you accept it, he's still lying now, right? Because
what they wanted was signatures to be matched up with ballots. That's not like super preposterous. I don't know, maybe it is, but on face value hearing it, it's not super preposterous to say I want signatures to have to match with voted ballots versus what the person signed their signature with prior. I think it sounds reasonable, at least. I'm sure somebody could make an argument if they made a good argument that said it actually isn't reasonable and told me why. I would concede it, but just at face value, it does sound reasonable to ask for signature verification.
The Cyber Ninjas didn't find evidence of fraud.
Yeah.
They didn't.
I mean, I really feel like if you sat down and presented everything to Trump now and he still denied it, then you could honestly say, like, look, dude, either you're delusional or you're lying.
He still denies it.
I think he's delusional. I think you think Trump is... A lot of the cases that they didn't win or whatever, Trump doesn't bring up Arizona anymore. So I don't think he's delusional to that regard. I'm just trying to go with his example. There's a lot of points that Trump was saying after 2020 that he dropped, and most of them were the bad points. So...
show that he's lying unless he comes out and says, I admit I lied.
I think your theory is actually nicer to Trump than mine. I think he's a fucking idiot.
I don't think my theory is nicer, because my theory is implying a malevolence about Trump. That if there's a word that fits that pattern, it's an evil intent. It's an intent to deceive. It's an intent to take hold of our constitutional republic.
I think he's too stupid. I just don't think he's smart enough. He's too stupid. And I think he really believed his legal advice, and at the end of the day, he just fucking is an idiot.
I'm aware of the time, and listen, as much as I want to get to some.
I'm getting tired, dude. I can't argue my mess right now. I'm sorry.
It's cool. I'm aware of the time. I will leave it to the audience to decide for themselves whether they think my version or mechanisms for determining lies is more on point than yours. I think it's fair, even just as a biased participant, for me to say that you have a much higher threshold.
Absolutely.
For lying than I do, much higher.
So let's take real quick what the beginning of this debate was about. Was 3 tweets that I took exception to that he put out, calling Trump a traitor, which he conceded on immediately, saying that there was a coup and saying that there was an insurrection. There's no proof that there was a coup and an insurrection. So Pisco, by his own standards, is lying by saying those things. I think 4 people were charged with sedition. The FBI came out and said there was almost no coordination at all with the rioting. The people that stormed the Capitol were unarmed, and most of them never even went toward where they need to in order to overthrow the chambers of Congress. And we have 6,000 hours of released video that show that most of them were kind of peacefully let in, etc. There's a lot more to that than he's letting on to, and when you really look at the totality of it all, his argument falls apart. But just his standard of a lie, it doesn't hold up to his own words. I wish I would have looped this around back to the original point for standard of lie. Like, by your own standard of lying, your hyperbole on Twitter was lying, and I didn't do that.
Anything other than an outright confession, I don't even think.
No, just proof.
Lie.
I think proof. I think if you're calling someone's making an action, you're saying that they did an action intentionally. You just have to show that it's intentional. And I don't think the evidence is there to show Trump's intentional.
For Darrell Brooks, right? For Darrell Brooks, you're willing to get to intent. Intent is a kind of mental state, right? Yeah. Intent to deceive, intent to kill, all that stuff, right? And you can even get it for Darrell Brooks' lies. Darrell Brooks admits one lie in the interview with the police. He admits that he lied about his mom's car and whether or not his mom had a car. But other than that, seldom ever does he admit to lying. Yeah. He doesn't admit to lying, right? But we still say he's a liar, right? Because all the evidence, the totality of circumstances shows that he knows, right? He knew when he was talking to those officers exactly what they were talking about, what they were getting at. He knew exactly what he did, and him trying to do a big act and stuff.
This is my argument, not his. He's saying that if somebody says something without proof that they're lying, what I'm saying is, in order to say somebody's lying, you have to have proof. And he's using my argument of, look at all this proof we have that Darrell Brooks was lying, which we have him again. He made claims that he was trying to swerve away from people. He made claims that he was honking his horn, that he was telling people to get out of the way, that he was trying to slow down. And the video evidence and eyewitness testimony says all those things were not true. So if we have him saying something that video evidence shows he was doing the exact opposite, and then we can determine it was a lie. If we have Trump saying on video, we lost this campaign, we lost this 2020 election, but I need you to overturn it anyways, then I'd be like, yeah, you're 100% right, dude, but we don't have that. And the reason you know his lie standard is shit is because as soon as he is trying to prove Darrell Brooks is lying, he pivots to my standard. So
all the circumstances, our perceptions about reasonable humans lead to the, in my opinion, beyond a reasonable doubt conclusion that Darrell Brooks, even when he's not admitting it, but just based on the circumstances of the actions and the evidence that he has access to and that he knows and he witnessed, all show that he's lying.
Yeah, I agree.
Say, everything on the Darrell Brooks, it's on all fours of what Trump's doing. Trump has access to all the information, just like Darrell Brooks has access to discovery.
Sure.
Trump is, there's more investigations for the Trump stuff, right? He has his own executive branch looking into stuff, his own lawyers. He has all these assets that Darrell Brooks doesn't have, but yet you're willing to accept that Darrell Brooks was lying, even though very seldomly does he admit to lying, if ever. Trump also doesn't admit.
He keeps trying to go to this standard that I need a confession, and that is not my standard. I said it earlier. I'm tired at this point. It's like 2:30 in the morning. Again, I go to bed at like 11 o'clock, even on the weekends. Like, I'm way past my prime here. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of leeway for not closing this debate out as strongly as I should. But it still isn't right. Like, I definitely should have looped this back around to the original conversation. I should have called him out because every time he's trying to talk about lying, he shifts from his silly standard to my standard of proof. And
to lying.
I don't think his intent
on him, even though all the evidence shows that he's.
Yeah, I don't think there was proof that he had intent to murder. I just think that we caught him in other lies, like the three that I brought up.
Sorry. Wait, you don't think there was an intent for Darrell Brooks to murder?
I just don't think there's exact proof for it.
He's innocent.
No. I just think committing murder is still committing murder. I just don't think there's concrete proof that he had intent to go in there and kill people. I think that we use, as you said, the sum of evidence to come to that conclusion, and a lot of that was catching him in other lies with facts.
They charged him with intentional murder.
Yeah.
Right? There's unintentional murder, but that.
Oh, let's see what they charged him with, just to be. They charged him with first-degree homicide. I want to say since the guy went to legal school and whatnot, he probably knows more than me about this, but I just want to, check it out. Intentional killing of another person he's acting deliberately. I think that, so he is right about that standard. I just want to check that out real quick because I honestly didn't know myself. So he is right about that standard. They charge him with intentional murder, and I think that's because they have him on video speeding up his car and swerving toward crowds of people. And that shows his intentionality because we have it on video of him doing that. We have multiple angles. We have tons of eyewitnesses. We have people that were struck by the car that lived, all saying, like, there was a path for him to go, or he could have stopped his car, and he didn't. He swerved toward us, and he looked like he was trying to hit as many people as he could. So that's where the intentionality came from, is that the video evidence showed him doing this, swerving toward crowds of people to hit them, and speeding up, accelerating. So
that still requires a state of mind that requires malice. So some kind of reckless.
Didn't he say some things about killing white people or something like that? I think that's what they
doesn't matter. I don't remember. Whatever statement you're going to give about killing white people and all that stuff, it's equivocal enough that
I know. You're right.
So for you to sit here and say there was no evidence that he intended to murder,
then
he shouldn't have been convicted of intentional murder.
Well,
he was convicted of it.
The point I was bringing up with Daryl Brooks is he said I had my head out the window. I was telling people to move. I was beeping, and we have video evidence and eyewitness testimony saying the opposite. If we had
show that he intended to murder,
if we had video evidence of Trump saying I know I lost the election, I would hands down be on your side.
I know, but first of all,
that's my whole point there, and I don't think he's ever going to address that. That we have on video Daryl Brooks speeding up his car and driving toward crowds of people to hit them, and that's intentionality.
Daryl Brooks doesn't admit to lying, except for the only one I recall is about the grandma's car. That's the only time I think that I recall that he lied. And acknowledged his lie. But even separating that,
that's not it. What happened was he first said, and this is going off of memory. What he first said in interrogation is that a friend gave him a ride to a different house. They were watching a football game, and I think he said some girl came on to him. There's some sort of drama with the girl and his friend, and that's why his friend wouldn't give him a ride back home. So there was nothing with his grandma's car. He said he got a ride from a friend.
Out. All those lies that you're pointing to, even if you could prove them, which I think on your standard you couldn't because he didn't admit to those lies. I think he was still maintaining the same thing with the lawsuits, right? He was.
So I kind of stuck up for myself here a little bit, but like he is bastardizing my point and then attacking the straw man that he set up. My point isn't just a confession. There's more to it than just a confession. So the fact that he's just sticking to that and ignoring my actual point, even though I'm telling him that's not my standard, you've got it wrong, he just ignores that and keeps plowing forward with a straw man, really kind of shows me, like, even when he's calm, he's still unable to argue points against me, who's basically yawning between every sentence.
Maintaining those lies for a long time, and I'm sure even to the point of conviction. He still believed, he purported to still believe those lies, a great many of them. Right? He believed the lie that he thought that there was no subject matter jurisdiction, right? He thought that he was not the entity.
It's sovereign citizenship.
So all of those, he could claim just as much genuineness as Donald Trump can on the legal theories, on the fact that he still maintained and he still had a colorable claim to, all that shit. But all of that notwithstanding, it doesn't speak to his intent to kill, right? How can you prove he intended to kill those people?
Video evidence. I don't know, honestly.
He never admitted he intended to kill.
I think that he drove toward them and gassed the car up and went faster and kept driving through them. And instead of stopping and doing anything,
literally thought that they were going to be okay. He could have thought.
Now this is kind of a dumb point here. It doesn't matter if he thought that they were going to be okay or not. He sped up his car, a machine that can cause death. Like, a reasonable assumption is if you drive a car into somebody, they die. If you really believe that they would be okay after you hit somebody with a car that you're speeding up and driving right into them, you may be delusional. You may have some sort of mental blockage, but Daryl Brooks was cleared of any mental issues like that prior to the trial. He was deemed competent to stand trial mentally. So the argument of delusion really doesn't fit in here. I don't know. That's.
Well, no, he could have thought that they weren't going to die. One of the requirements for murder is that someone die.
Yeah, I should have said that here, but that this would be delusional for him to think that, and he was cleared of being delusional when they cleared him mentally competent to stand trial. So that's probably the better counter argument. And I missed it. And again, I'm tired. I don't want to make excuses. I should have done better here, calling this out. There's a lot at the end here I could have done a lot better. Yeah, I mean, if he really thought that, then he's an idiot. And I'm telling you, like, there is a possibility he's a fucking idiot.
Why was he convicted of murder if he didn't have the requisite intent?
I'm not sure. I don't know. What I can say is is there not a slight possibility that he really might have thought that? I mean, he asked the same question like 5 times, and I keep giving him the same answer over and over. At this point, it's like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what to tell you, really, is what I should have said there, because I do stand by my point that I made over and over that he never addressed, that we have video evidence of it. But I don't know what else to tell him here, because I've literally answered this question now 5 times, and he's just ignoring my answer and re-asking it. I don't think there is, but I don't know.
There's a negligible. That's what I would say.
Okay, thank you.
That's what I'm not using a term of art. I'm just saying I'm using the term negligible as I understand the term negligible.
My brain's slipping minutes to the morning.
We can end for soon, but in my mind, the likelihood that he didn't have the requisite intent for that conviction is negligible, and you can dismiss it. And it's the same, like, even though I can't literally, he never admitted to wanting to kill those people, right? And you might make an argument, hey, and just to be clear, the intent to kill could also be covered by practical certainty of, like, knowing that it was almost certain that you're going to kill someone. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a purpose to kill. It could be doing it with, like, a knowing state of mind where you're
practical certainty. That's what I needed for my argument, because that's basically when you hit somebody with a car, you're practical certainty that they're going to die. You know, so I appreciate him actually. He's helping my argument here the way I was helping his earlier. And again, like, if this is the only version of Pisco that I ever met, I'd still like the guy. A lot of the debates I watched with him before I jumped into the debate sphere, with people like this, I watched him in debates, and I saw a lot more of this version of Pisco. So I really thought this conversation was going to go a different way than it did.
Practically certain that doing this would result in death. But either way, those are mental states, none of which he agreed to and none of which he admitted to. Even though, right, he could make an argument, I didn't want those people to die. I wasn't sure they were going to die, because then I would be in trouble more. So why would I want them to die? Why do you think I'm practically certain? Do you think if I was practically certain they were going to die, I would do this? How can you convict me of this? If you like, it was so stupid of me to do this out in the open and to run people over with the intent to kill. Obviously, I didn't mean to kill them. Obviously, I didn't think they were going to die. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done this. Doesn't that sound like exactly the argument? I mean, the argument you're making with Trump.
Sort of. If Darrell Brooks made that argument and maybe he won, he would have got.
You would buy it?
No, I probably wouldn't, because again, he got caught lying on actual facts so many times with video evidence.
But Trump has been caught lying on collateral matters all the time.
But again, a lot of his claims were not validated. He still had open legal cases that were withdrawn on January 20th, and a lot of the other claims, even one of them was justified. And now I know people overstated. I saw you say, like, in Pennsylvania there was no actual laws about the votes, but I think it was Wisconsin actually ruled that their laws with mail-in voting were unconstitutional by the state constitution. And that it took me way too long to bring up this point. This should have been thrown out a long time earlier. Trump's claims that vote by mail was illegal were validated in Wisconsin. Let's see how Pisco addresses that.
Yeah, so that decision, which I totally disagree with him, is
he disagrees with it. Okay, don't give a shit what you think. I'm saying that the Supreme Court of the state made a claim that was backed by their state constitution. So it really doesn't matter what your interpretation is, does it?
Stupid as hell, the Wisconsin Supreme Court decision that you're referencing.
Yeah.
Also is not a basis to claim that the election was fraudulent. And what's more is there's no basis to think that because of those systems being the ones that were ruled.
So hold on. It's not a basis to say the election was fraudulent when potentially hundreds of thousands of votes that were cast illegally were counted. That sounds to me like exactly the basis to make a claim that an election was fraudulent. This state passed laws that were unconstitutional, and before they had the chance to be challenged by the courts, they were used to count votes, and then once the court challenges came in, we found that those methods were illegal. That's a pretty good claim to say the election was stolen. and it's backed by the state Supreme Court of Wisconsin, at least in that one state. Like, that's a pretty solid claim if you ask me. But he just says, I disagree with it, and I don't think it's good enough. I don't really care kind of what your personal feelings are on this. Like, I'm going with the actual legal experts, the ones that are in office, and their decision.
Ruled unconstitutional under the Wisconsin state constitution. That those would have some kind of partisan effect such that Biden would be the loser of that election. And even if you could show that Biden would be the loser of Wisconsin, if those provisions weren't in place, which wasn't done, and even if procedurally speaking, this was a ripe thing to do. And
now what he's doing is saying, my one example, it wasn't enough to prove voter fraud in the entire election. I never claimed it was. I claimed it was just one of the many things that Trump actually got right about 2020. Just one of the many, and he's acting like that's the only factor, and just because that one factor doesn't prove the entire argument Trump made, that factor's in there. And that's not how it works, buddy.
Even if it wasn't the height of hypocrisy to bring the challenge after the election happens and after you've tacitly agreed to those procedures, it still wouldn't be enough because Wisconsin wasn't enough to turn the outcome of the election. And so nothing about the Wisconsin Supreme Court decision at all, especially later in time, the Wisconsin that happened in the last year and a half, that came out, doesn't speak to his intent at the time either, right? The time.
Oh, let's see how long ago it was. Wisconsin. Oh, this was, about a year and a half ago. Okay, he's right. Even if, regardless, like, these are Trump's claims that vote by mail was illegal and it assisted the opposition in winning the election. And one state validating that does give some credit to Trump's point. It probably wasn't as strong as he was intending it, but it does give some credit to his point. And again, this was just one of the many, many points he made. And he's saying because this one point doesn't prove all of Trump's claims, this one point is not a good example. But I completely disagree, and the only reason it doesn't sound that way is because he's framing it that way, when it's not really the argument anyone was making. Again, I'm too tired to call this out. I should have. This is what I should have said to him. Like, I wasn't giving you Trump's entire argument. I was giving you one example of how he was actually right, and you're dismissing that because it doesn't prove every argument he made. It doesn't make sense.
Line here's gonna screw you over. It screws you over the Electoral Count Act revisions by Congress, which is not relevant to his intent with respect to his ability to order pens to do stuff. The timeline's fucking you over because that's extremely important to the intent of Trump at any given moment.
I think he thought these things and they had to be disproven first in order for him to not think them. And I think he still believes them. I don't know. But that being said, I don't think we're going to go much further on this. I got a lot of other stuff. Can I ask you, this is my first verbal debate. How did I do?
I am glad that you brought facts to bear. It was a lot of, like, for me, I like a lot of these circular kind of conversations. I didn't like when we go topic to topic because that it makes me a little bit have to do the meta, because if I don't do the meta and point it out,
I gotcha.
We're just going anywhere you feel, and maybe that has to do with some there's a lot of things to cover, and so and it's late, and so I understand that you might want to touch a lot.
So kind of what he's saying here is, if you had too many facts, so I had to use sophistry to combat them because I just didn't have counterfacts to negate your claims. I wasn't prepared for this debate is kind of what he should have said. I didn't think you were going to be this informed on the topics, and I thought I could just win with rhetoric, and it didn't work. It didn't work at all.
Different topics?
You know what? The rest of this is just me being nice and saying thank you and appreciating him. So I think I'm just going to end it there. If you want to watch the full thing without all my cuts and editorializing and whatnot, I don't think that I cherry-picked anything to make this debate seem any different than it really was. I kind of think that my first verbal debate here was a massive success. I think that I kind of came out the victor here, to be honest, and I should have been a little better at calling out some of the tactics he used. I don't know, man. Most people I talk to in real life aren't this dishonest, so I didn't really know how to deal with it. I'm going to cover my next debate after this with somebody that I find to be equally as dishonest, if not more, and I really feel like he never addressed a single one of my points, so stay tuned for that. If you made it this far, leave like, sub, all that. Thanks for watching, and I love you. I love you. You hear that? I love you.